is November, and you guys gave me some really good questions to answer. So I'm just gonna start right out, and hopefully this ends up to be around 10 minutes. We'll see. Someone asked about checking glucose and ketones regularly and that it hurts their fingers. So I personally, I do check my glucose semi-regularly. I used to every day, because what you measure, you can manage. And you can learn a lot from that. But I don't do it every day. I only do it when I want to test something. Like the other day I ate a bunch of watermelon. And so I wanted to confirm, mostly to show other people, that it didn't spike my blood sugar. Whereas in the past it definitely would have. I rarely check ketones. If you're using a blood meter, that's gonna measure BHB, beta hydroxybutyrate, which measures the amount of potential fat for fuel in your bloodstream. The longer that you're fat adapted, the more efficient your body will be at actually using up that fat for fuel. And so it'll become more efficient at clearing it from your bloodstream. So that ketone number, if you're using a blood meter, can actually get lower the more fat adapted you are. I think it would be cool to get a breath meter, which measures the amount of fat that has already been oxidized. And then also the urine strips are pretty useless. So if you're hurting your finger, then I would suggest getting a continuous glucose monitor. So that's something that you put in your arm. It stays there for about 14 days, I think, to my knowledge. I don't do that because I would just be looking at the numbers all the time, and honestly, my numbers are pretty boring. It's almost always 80, 85. It's a flat line, and I can feel when it's different. So I don't personally desire to have one of those. But if you really want to be checking your glucose and ketones for whatever reason, if your energy is poor, if you're not sure if you're fat adapted, if you want to see how you're responding to certain foods, I think that's fantastic, and I would definitely consider getting a continuous glucose monitor. If I had to choose between one or the other, or sometimes I work with people and they ask, is it important to track my ketones or glucose? I usually tell people that it's more important to track your glucose, because what we're looking for is glucose stabilization. We're looking for the flat line. We don't want roller coaster up and down. We want the flat line. If that's happening, then I can almost guarantee that you are fat adapted to some degree. You're most definitely insulin sensitive and metabolically flexible, and that's the goal. If your goal is deep ketosis for, say you have someone with epilepsy, and you're really wanting to get those therapeutic ketones, that is an instance where I would say you should definitely invest in a ketone meter, either a blood meter or a breath meter. Someone said, I saw that you're eating carbs. Are you no longer strict? You answered your own question. I do eat carbs occasionally. I had watermelon the other day, but I really am pretty low carb. Some of the things that I've eaten, I think some people are like, oh my gosh, but it's really pretty low carb. The highest carb things that I've consumed is definitely popcorn. The amount that I have is no more than 26 grams of carbs in one sitting, and I do fine with that. I do that about once a month. Tyler really enjoys popcorn. He does it more frequently, but it's usually late at night when he's eating it, and I don't like eating late at night, so I just skip it. But I feel fine, honestly. And I've definitely enjoyed trying a sweet potato. I had one sweet potato. Blood sugar was super stable. I had a chunk of watermelon like this big, one of those boats, like one wedge. I had the whole thing, and my blood sugar was 81 after. So yeah, I have not been strict actually for a while now. I started introducing other foods about a year ago. Started with coconut, romaine lettuce, cilantro, things like that. Before that, I just reintroduced egg whites and butter. Before that, I just reintroduced egg yolks. So I did go almost a whole year of just meat. And that was really important for me personally. I was highly sensitive and reactive to so many things, but I have a highlight on my Instagram called Unfragile. And it's all about becoming unfragile for people who have been through quite a healing journey and gut issues and food intolerance. You just need to know that you can get on the other side of the fence, and actually it can be better than it ever was before, because that's how it is for me. I would have never thought that I'd be able to eat popcorn again without feeling like I want to binge on it. Same with watermelon, but I have zero urge to binge. My blood sugar is stable, all as well. So yeah, I'm not strict, but I will say that 95% of maybe more, 97, 98% of what I'm eating is animal foods. Hypothyroid on carnivore or low carb. You need to eat more food. I had 2 cases of hypothyroidism. One was the Hashimoto's autoimmune hypothyroid, and one was just regular hypothyroid. And in both instances, I ate significantly more. In both instances, I was not under eating to begin with, though that can be the cause. But I think stress was really the cause, and the fact that I was malnourished. So I just needed to eat more. And I personally, the first time around with Hashimoto's, I used fat. I just ate a lot more fat. Also, supplementing with iodine, selenium, and zinc are very important for the thyroid. I have a video on iodine also. Oh, and no matter what type of hypothyroidism you have, if you have amenorrhea, it just doesn't matter. There's no situation where you need to eat carbs. And some people will tell you that. Some people will say, okay, well, I have hypothalamic amenorrhea, so I need to eat carbs, but that's false. You can eat carbs, and that can potentially help, but if you are a person who you know that carbs are a slippery slope and they negatively affect your mood and things like that, then you need to know that you don't have to eat carbs. I didn't do it twice. All of my healing happened 0 carb. Fasting versus exercise for autophagy. So I actually think that you should try exercising while fasted, depending on who you are. If you have healthy adrenals, if you're sleeping well, if you eat well, if your nutrition is pretty good, stable, on point, you're definitely nourished. If you don't know of any issues that you have, like hypothyroidism or deficiencies or anything like that, if you're in a good place, try exercising while fasted. I think that is going to give you high rates of autophagy. I still exercise fasted every morning with Tyler. We go to CrossFit. I don't eat until afterwards, and I'm pregnant, and I'm fat adapted, and I feel great, and it's totally fine. If you do have issues, then I would not do that. Don't exercise fasted, and don't push yourself in your exercising or your fasting. It just really depends on the person whether or not fasting is appropriate. And I've spoken about this before in other videos, but precursor to fasting is becoming fat adapted. If you're not fat adapted, that means you're running on glucose primarily, and when you run out of glucose in your bloodstream, your body is going to look for glycogen storage in your muscles and in your liver. But when you're fat adapted, your body turns to its own body fat. So that is a much safer situation when your body knows how to burn fat. So number 1, become fat adapted before you think of fasting. In terms of what's better for autophagy, I think it could be equal. What does your exercise look like? There are days where I go into CrossFit and I push it out. Like I leave there and I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. On those days, I'm probably getting more autophagy than I did for fasting 20 hours. But if you're just going to the gym and walking on a treadmill and then lifting some weights or doing some cable work, I think that fasting is going to give you higher rates of autophagy. Regardless, I think that your decision should be based on what is most appropriate for you at this time. Intermittent fasting is a great way to induce autophagy on a regular basis as well. Did my family react to my food choices? When I decided to go carnivore, no, they didn't react. At that point, they had already pretty much let me go. At one point, my family and I were not talking. I was literally blocked from calling them. They thought that I had an eating disorder. I had been treated in an eating disorder unit, that I lost all that weight again, and they thought basically all my issues were stemmed from an eating disorder, which at the time was very hard for me to wrap my head around, but looking back, I was 69 pounds. And I probably would have done the same thing if I was in their shoes and my kid was dying. When I switched to carnivore, first of all, I didn't talk to them until maybe 6 months into it, and it's because I had gotten in a really bad car accident. My car was totaled, and my old pastor told my parents that I was in an accident, and that's when they reached out because they were worried. And then I told them, I am doing better. I'm in a safer place. That's when Tyler had said, hey, you can come live in my bonus room. He was just a stranger from Airbnb. And then my mom no longer felt the need that she needed to block me because I wasn't asking them for help anymore. They just felt I'm sure they were in a very awkward place. So I told her what I was doing, and the only thing that mattered was that I was doing better. I don't think they would care if I was eating bugs, as long as I said I'm gaining weight and I'm getting better. And they heard hope in my voice, and they were like, that's great, keep it up. They thought it was kind of weird. And I went on a trip to the beach with my mom, and it was during a time where I was still healing. It was like right before I had gotten my period back, and I was just so hungry for protein, and I knew I was overeating protein, and I was kind of embarrassed to be doing that in front of my family, because I was like, I hope they don't think I have another eating disorder. But I did, and no one said anything, and now they reach out to me for advice and nutrition, health, and things like that. So my family didn't react. No, they were always encouraging. They just needed me to be in the right place before they could handle any type of relationship, which is understandable. Can you have a casein allergy if I'm getting diarrhea from butter? Butter doesn't have casein. It would be lactose. So butter is my exception to the no dairy recommendation or rule, because butter is basically just fat. Now, if you have lactose intolerance, then butter will give you issues and probably diarrhea. Casein is a protein that's found in cheese and other dairies. Can you have adequate BMs with 70% beef, 30% fat, and animal fat and protein? So basically, can you have adequate BMs on a carnivore diet? Yeah, definitely. Now, if you're moving from paleo or keto with heavy vegetables, then you're probably going to eliminate less, because if you're used to consuming insoluble fiber and all these waste, you're going to be using the restroom more. But when you move away from that, you're assimilating and absorbing most of what you're eating. So it will be probably less and less frequent. I like to tell people, I think you should go at least every 48 hours. To each their own. If you feel great and you're going longer, that's up to you. But when I work with people and they ask how frequently, I say, if you've gone 48 hours and you haven't eliminated at all, then maybe try sipping on some warm salt water to pull some water into your colon to produce a bowel movement, because I can almost guarantee there's something in there that needs to come out. But the answer is yes, 100%. Tips for candida. Stop eating sugar, stop eating things that feed candida. That includes fermented foods. Even some like lettuce, low-carb lettuce, can feed candida. So if you have a long-standing candida issue, I would recommend removing all that. And then if it's still bad, I personally have a protocol that I use with people, and the basis of it is using oregano oil, but you can't just take it and take it and take it. There's a method to it. So that would be my other recommendation, is if you have truly given nutrition a really fair shot and it's not doing anything, then you might want to consider doing a protocol with oregano, or there are some other herbs that you can use that can be beneficial. But I couldn't sit here and tell you that whole protocol right now. That would be a lot. And it looks different from person to person. Meats from grocery store to boost fat other than bacon and ribs. Chuck roast is affordable and pretty fatty and delicious, especially when it's colder outside. You can pressure cook it so it falls apart, but then if you get sick of that texture, you can put it back in the air fryer, put some fat on it, and air fry it until it's crispy, and then you have Michaela Peterson's meat popcorn. Other fatty cuts. Beef, well, I guess I was going to say short ribs, but those are ribs. Lamb chops are fatty, picanha, ribeye. I think any cut of lamb would be fatty. But beef is not as fatty as lamb. I think ribeye is one of the fattiest cuts of beef, and it's only 1-to-1 fat to protein. You could try finding a clean sausage. I mean, so when I think of my high fat cuts, it's easy, but at the store, that's different. Because I get most of my meat from Billy Doe Meats or North Star Bison, and they have a ton of high fat cuts. The bison bratwurst are super fatty, but so good. And Billy Doe Meats is just tons of fat. Lamb sirloin, lamb ribs, lamb chops, lamb loins, anything lamb. But at the store, it's just a different game. You're gonna be a little bit more limited. I would say, if you can eat eggs, try making buttery eggs. You can make Equip protein, prime protein shakes with butter in it. That's what Tyler was doing. Really helped him to gain some healthy weight. Yeah, you're gonna be a little bit more limited. You could also make like a hollandaise sauce, which is egg yolks and butter, and put that on top of your meat. If it's a leaner meat, that could help too. What are some typical meals that I eat? Lately, since I've been pregnant, burgers are I love burgers. I eat burgers on a romaine lettuce. I put some sauerkraut on there. First of all, I make the whole pound. I cut it into 4 patties, make the patties. Then I cut those patties in half, put it on a romaine leaf, put some sauerkraut, a little bit of mustard. I have been using the Primal Kitchen ketchup, just a little bit, and I eat that, and I eat the whole pound. I've also been eating sweetbreads with that. It's so good. I like eggs. I eat eggs probably 3 or 4 times a week. I also really love the leg steaks from Billy Doe Meats. It's lamb, but it's probably one of the leanest cuts of lamb, and it's just really good. It tastes more like a regular steak to me. I have been more sensitive to the gamey meats as I'm pregnant, and the bison bratwurst from North Star Bison that I just mentioned. I ate a whole package, which comes with 5 very large bratwurst. I just go through seasons of foods. But previously, before I got pregnant, I was always eating veal, shrimp, and the Prime Protein shakes and some carnivore brownies. That was like every day. And then I would mix it up with different cuts every now and then, but for the most part, that's what I like to eat. Billy Doe Meats for sure, and North Star Bison. How do you seal a leaky gut? Cut out the interference, cut out plant foods, which contain anti-nutrients, which can really be harmful to your gut, or become mindful of the ones of the anti-nutrients that are harming your gut. And that's what I do with my clients. It doesn't have to be strict Lyme diet to heal your gut. It doesn't. But you are going to have to be a little bit more mindful. So if you want the simple approach, cut it all out, and then eat animal foods. So you're going to get that collagen and animal fat, which is equally as important to healing and sealing your gut. Oh, and also reduce stress. If you have high stress, that can absolutely interfere with your gut healing. A type 1 diabetic with high albumin and asking how to lower it. So high albumin typically means that you're either dehydrated or you're overeating protein. If you are a carnivore, you can expect for your albumin to be higher. You can also expect for your kidney enzymes and your liver enzymes to be elevated for a time. When I did a high protein experiment 2 years ago, 1.5 years, 2 years, yeah, it was 2 years, it was in the fall. My liver and kidney enzymes were elevated, and my rheumatologist was like, yeah, but you're only eating meat. And he said, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. Come back in 3 months. And I came back in 3 months, and I didn't change anything, and they were normal again. So when you start eating more protein, you're asking your kidneys to work harder. Your kidneys are a muscle, just like your quads. So when you go to the gym and you do a heavy leg workout and your quads are on fire and you have buildup of lactic acid in your quads, that's very similar to eating more protein than you were eating. You are tonifying your kidneys. You are tonifying these things by eating more protein. There is literally no study that actually shows that protein causes kidney disease or anything like this. If you actually open up any of those studies, there is no proof. And we do have proof that it helps to tonify your kidneys. So if you're concerned about those levels being high and you're a carnivore, I would ask your doctor to run the necessary tests. What does that pose a risk for? Probably kidney disease. So I would run your kidney enzymes, do another panel, and then that will reassure you that you're okay. So that's my number 1 advice. I think this is coming from a carnivore, I'm not sure. So that would be my advice.